This is Dougald Hine. He is one of the founders of Dark Mountain, which is an environmentally addressing organization with a little bit different message than most of them.
I guess so, yeah. I mean, the way I would usually describe it is as a cultural movement, which was started by a couple of writers, both of whom had been active within the environmental movement in the UK. And I think we came together out of a sense of frustration with the way in which environmentalism and sustainability had become narrowed into a kind of technical search for fixes to problems, premised on the idea that somehow our current way of living could be made sustainable and that was desirable, and neither of those things were obvious to us. And it felt like more and more people we knew within the environmental movement were kind of saying things in public which they didn't feel to be true in their hearts, and didn't have a place where they could go and have a more open conversation about, maybe we're not just dealing with a set of problems that we can fix. Maybe we're actually living through a difficult historical moment, an unfolding of something that is going to be very messy as these ecological crises that we've been talking about for years converge with the kind of social and economic and cultural crises that are shaping the world right now. And so I guess Dark Mountain has been about giving people a space to talk about that and to look for new stories and new maps by which to make sense of the world.
Why have you sort of given up hope that we can save the present civilization?
Oh, I haven't given up hope. I don't know that the present civilization, if you call it that, or the world as we know it, is all that worth saving in some ways. Like, I think that often one of the things within environmentalism has been that we have ended up hiding behind science, a deeper conviction that there is something completely wrong with the situation of the world, that there's something wrong with our way of living, that there's something wrong with our way of making sense of reality, that we actually have to go deep into these cultural roots. And I think a lot of people have ended up giving up on saying that and hiding behind the fact they're going, well, we can't go on like this because we're facing complete unsustainability in terms of carbon emissions, in terms of all of the other things that are going wrong in terms of science, what science is telling us. But there's a sort of deeper question, which is, if there was some magic technical fix for climate change, would we be okay? How many people within the environmental movement really feel that? How many of us actually came into this because we have a sense that there is something badly disordered in the whole way we've been approaching the world, and that uncontrolled, counterproductive industrialism and all of its consequences are one manifestation, one symptom of that deeper cultural problem. And I think that's what we've been driving at.
Yeah. So let's say we get a second chance, you and I. What should we make different next time around in order to get the kind of solutions we're missing and we don't even talk about, the needs we don't even talk about today?
I think that maybe the questions are simpler than that. The questions are about what does it mean to live well and to make life work for ourselves and those around us, and what are the things within our current way of living which have been marginalized or undervalued, which might help us arrive at a balance. But I think if there was one thing that I would say that would make a huge difference, it's if we could find a way of having conversations, grown-up conversations, public conversations in which things that cannot be measured are taken seriously. Because I think that a huge amount of the way that we've got into the horrendous mess that we're in is actually down to the need to represent everything as if it can be measured in order to be able to bring it into public conversation, political conversation.
Dream of the rational paradise.
Yeah, I mean...
Is that what we've been working on?
Perhaps. I don't know if it's even that coherent, but yes, okay. I think that, you know, there has been a model of reality that goes many generations deep, which has a lot to answer for in terms of the things it's made us blind to and the things which it makes it hard for us to imagine or decide to do.
So we have sort of sold out some of the subjective experiences, sort of exchanged them maybe for the measurable goals.
I think that we've lost the ability to be taken seriously if we go out in public and talk about the subjective experiences. And I think that there are deep philosophical roots to what we're talking about. I think, and there are also people coming from a grounding within these deep historical questions of our ways of thinking and ways of looking at the world who can help us navigate this. I mean, people like David Abraham has been very helpful to me in the way that he has drawn on phenomenology as a route.
Psychology.
Phenomenology. So he's very much when you talk about the subjective, he would be similarly talking about our experience as the ground for what we can talk about in a way which actually challenges a lot of what the kind of the settlement of modernity that was made in the time of, through the kind of periods of Descartes and Locke, and somebody else who's I'm finding very helpful in navigating this is my friend Andrew Taggart, who's a philosopher in New York, freelance philosopher, who writes wonderfully and in a very human way about these questions and about, these hidden assumptions about what reality is. The sort of hidden assumption that the stuff that you can measure is more real than your experience, that your experience is to be mistrusted. These things, these conversations are not going to give us a map which we can hand to policymakers or a design for a new reality, but they may help us open up the blind spots in such a way that over time, as we have to deal with practical questions, our maps are less upside down. In
the end of the day, it's the subjective experience that we're longing for, and sometimes we take use of objects out there in order to reach those. And I think what Dark Mountain is doing, which is very important, is bringing a space where we can talk about this.
I think that's certainly true. I think that there has been a risk of a kind of a barrenness to the things that can be talked about within the movements.
That can be bought and sold on the market as well.
Yeah, and carbon markets will save the world.
Yeah.
We have to take the risk. Actually, the vulnerability of bringing our whole selves to these conversations. Exactly.